Can you honestly say that no child suffers for the benefit of your Federation? That no child lives in poverty or squalor, while those who enjoy abundance look away?
All right, welcome back to the General Order 1 podcast, where we are discussing Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I'm joined by my longtime friend, Ben.
Hello.
And not Jason today. Jason has other obligations, so he gets a day off.
He's on like the night crew of the Enterprise this week.
Yeah, right. He's working the lower decks today.
Yeah.
Today we are discussing Season 1, Episode 6, which is entitled Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach. The summary of the episode online was, a threat to an idyllic planet reunites Captain Pike with a lost love. To protect her and a scientific holy child from a conspiracy, Pike offers to help and is forced to face unresolved feelings of his past.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes, quite ominous indeed. So
before we start, we'll circle back to the end of what we thought of the episode. But this, I've talked about, reading the blurb and kind of thinking, what am I in for? This one didn't inspire a lot of confidence.
No, it didn't. And the title is kind of weird too. Lift Us Where Suffering Can. We'll have to talk about that during the episode because it. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So going in, didn't expect much from this one.
I did note that this episode does start with a recap, so I think we talked about that last time. I don't know. I think they all start with a recap.
Yeah, they do. I went back and looked. Yeah, I just hadn't remembered that they did that. So.
All right, the episode opens with a little Pike doing some voiceover, and he mentions that the Enterprise is in the Magellan system, just doing some routine cartographic surveying. So kind of just a random day on the Enterprise. They're not responding to any major crises or anything like that.
But he does mention that last time he was here, there was, a crisis, and he hopes it will be quieter this time.
Well, he's wrong.
Yeah.
So the first main plot point is that the Enterprise receives a distress call from a non-Federation shuttle, and they raise it on the view screen, and they see that there is a shuttle being chased by another ship, and they are attempting to attack this said shuttle. Because the Enterprise has received a distress call, they are obligated to respond. So Pike hails the attacker and basically says, hey, what's going on here? We're just making sure everything's okay. And the ship that's pursuing the...
Yeah, we get an indication pretty early that this ship doesn't have a terribly high level of technology because they've grabbed the other ship with some chains.
Oh, really? I totally missed that.
Yeah, they've literally shot like a harpoon at the other ship with chain, and attached to it with a chain.
Oh, interesting. The pursuing ship actually turns and attacks the Enterprise, and I think it's Ortegas mentions that it does 0.02. The shields are down 0.02% or something. So it's basically just a tiny, tiny scratch, a mosquito, bite out of. So the Enterprise is clearly not.
It's actually not Ortegas. It's someone that I think we've seen her before. It is Officer Mitchell.
Okay.
And I think we've seen her on the bridge before, but I don't think she's had lines before this episode.
I did make note that there was somebody new on the Enterprise that or new on the bridge, yeah.
And I don't think she's named in the episode at all. I don't think they ever refer to her. I think there is
one scene later, because I do remember.
Okay.
Yeah, because if I look at the transcripts, later in the episode when they deploy the tractor beam, Pike says, Mitchell, deploy a tractor beam, so.
Okay.
Anyway, it's not important. Let's use a new character. So the ship actually makes a run at the Enterprise. It continues to fire at them. Pike tells them basically to, fire back, but don't do any major damage. Just let them know that we're not going to just take this sitting down. And apparently the shuttle kind of zigs right at the wrong moment, right as their Enterprise is firing, and ends up basically destroying the entire shuttle that was pursuing them.
Yeah, it's not completely destroyed, but it's damaged significantly. They were trying to just fire a warning shot, basically, and it ends up blowing half the ship off. So,
right.
Oops. Whoops, our bad.
Yeah, right. So the the shuttle that was being pursued has been heavily damaged, so they beam the survivors to the Enterprise so they can get medical care. And in the transporter room, as the survivors beam in, is a good-looking redheaded lady, and Pike kind of does a double take, and he says, Alora. So clearly, Pike knows who this person is.
Yeah, and he's clearly extremely smitten. He's like,
oh yeah, right. He's
in a fog completely. He's
completely gobsmacked. He doesn't know what to do or what to say, which is very uncharacteristic for Pike because he's very charismatic.
And speaking of which, I want to go back a little bit. We started the episode with Pike with a lot of levity. One of our first scene with him, he's in the turbo lift with Uhura, and they're discussing her rotation with Luan. She's in security, and her shoulders are hurting from combat training. And he tells her to, it's lesson 1 of security that she's sore from. He tells her to, watch out for lesson 7. And she gets looks very concerned, asks him what lesson 7 is, and he opts not to tell her. He makes a little, quiet gesture with his, zips his lips, and they get off the turbo lift. And then, when
if just real quick, so if you'll remember in the last episode, Uhura she was rotating through engineering. She was working with Hemmer. So now in this episode, she's rotating through security and working with La'an.
Yeah, so she's getting her taste of each department as she goes through. So, and Luan clearly has a regimen of these lessons she's imparting on people. So
yes,
and Pike knows them. So she's been doing this for a while, apparently.
Yeah, it's kind of a source of comedy for the crew. It's the crew doesn't take it nearly as seriously as La'an does.
Yeah, they're all enjoying watching Luan put Uhura through her paces. And then there's a moment when they first get contact from the shuttle, and Pike orders the ship to approach. He says, Erica, take us closer. Which I thought was interesting. Instead of, he's on the bridge acting as captain of the Enterprise, but he's not referring to Ortegas by, lieutenant or officer or, Mr. Ortegas or whatever. He calls her Erica. So he's clearly very laid back in command.
That was the first time I think we've heard her first name. I mean, I guess other than the credits maybe, but I did note that too, that it did seem a little strange. It was very informal.
Yeah. So he's definitely the most, the least militaristic of any of the Star Trek captains we've encountered before. I just, I can't picture Picard referring to anyone by their first name while he's sitting in the captain's chair. I mean, he does if he's talking to someone in 10 forward or in his ready room or something. If it's one-on-one, he'll do that, but not in front of the whole crew.
Not on duty.
Right. So it struck me.
Okay. We see, Pike flirts like super awkwardly with Alora. I made note of it because, again, he's such a charismatic character and he's rather unflappable most of the time.
Yeah.
But he sees this lady.
He's a 13-year-old boy immediately. He almost gets giggly and telling her that he's a captain now. And
oh, that's right, because she calls him a lieutenant, and he was like, well, actually, I'm a captain, right?
Well, she says his uniform looks different. He's like, oh, well, she says, yellow looks good on you. He says, oh, well, actually, it's gold because, I'm a captain now.
Yes, so after their awkward flirting, so they beam a woman, they beam a man, and then a young boy, and the young boy is holding an ice pack to his head. And the father, or I think they clarify, I think Pike says, oh, are you this boy's father? And I don't remember exactly what he says.
He says only in a biological sense.
Yes. So, but the father does ask to go to sick bay because he wants to get this young boy checked out. The litany takes place, I did note that takes place at 5:02 in this episode. So this is, compared to the last episode, we're 15 minutes in. This one had a much shorter introduction.
Yeah, this is about where you'd expect it to happen.
Right.
Yeah, last time we were a third of the way into the episode before it hit. So, another sign that, while this is definitely sticking closer to the original Star Trek formula, it's still a streaming show, and they can get away with some changes to format that previous shows didn't. So this one has, they can afford to put the litany and the credits wherever they want in the episode. Whereas
they're not beholden to commercial breaks exactly every 15
on
minutes.
Broadcast TV, they have to do it before the first commercial break.
Okay.
And the other thing is they can do variable runtimes. So the runtimes on these episodes are all over the place, which is great. They get to do the runtime that the story needs and not have to do exactly 42 minutes.
Yeah, you don't have to cut out exactly 2 minutes and 30 seconds to make it work so you have enough time for commercials.
Yeah, so
we see we cut to Ubenga, and he is in sickbay, and he is reading a book to his daughter. He's taken her out of the pattern buffer, and he is reading her a book. It's the same book that he's been reading her for quite a while now, and it actually comes up later. So just make note that he is reading her this fantasy story.
Yeah, it's clearly some kind of fairy tale with a dragon and all kinds of stuff. But she complains that he's reading the same chapter as last time.
Right. And he was like, well, it's hard to keep up because, time is not changing for you, but it is for me. So right about then, the kid and his father walk in, and they make mention that the boy has minor head trauma, and they have the doctor and Chapel check him out, and actually the dad is like super duper protective of the kid, and he actually has some own. All he wants them to do is just scan this kid's head. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to give him any medication. You don't I'll take care of it.
Nurse Chapel goes to repair the minor head trauma that he's got with, she says the subdermal scalpel, I think is what she describes it as. And he says something like, get that, butcher knife away from my kid.
Yeah, that medieval instrument. Yeah, it's like this very rudimentary. Yeah. So what comes up is they scan the boy's head, and the father basically says, I just want to make sure that his quantum bio implants are functioning. And Ubenga kind of gets a little taken aback. He says, wait a minute, and they have a conversation about what that is and what that means. And basically, this boy has some sort of quantum implant in his brain that I don't know if it does or it accelerates his natural healing, but it automatically regenerates tissue, which is part of the reason that they didn't want Chapel to do anything, because the boy would heal on his own, given that these implants were functioning, which they were.
Yeah, we use some Star Trek-y techno lingo, but all we need to know is that the boy's got implants that heal him from any disease.
Yeah, I think at one point, because it piques Ubenga's interest, because he clearly has a daughter.
The ramifications of what this technology could do very quickly. Yes.
At one point, I think the dad it's Ubenga says that you could eliminate disease and suffering almost entirely with these quantum bioimplants. So the wheels are turning.
That there is no disease on their planet.
Yeah, essentially the planet that they are from is largely a utopia. So we see. Go ahead.
That's our first sign that there's going to be a catch.
Right.
Every Star Trek utopia has some kind of catch, so we'll see what this one is.
There is a quick ready room debrief between Alora and Pike, and she is basically talking about how important this little boy is. She says that the first servant is a very special child. So the boy's, I guess it's his title, it's not his name, is the first servant. And she mentions that they were on a retreat I believe it was on an asteroid. They were on a retreat so that the first servant could study his duties. So this young boy is not just a kid. He's, I would say, like a religious figure. And he has a job to do. He's not just a regular 13-year-old boy who collects Pokemon cards and plays Fortnite kind of thing.
Yeah, we get the sense he's like a child emperor kind of thing. Yeah,
there you go. Alora mentions, I think Pike asks, why would any idea why you were being attacked or who these people were? And Alora suggests that perhaps they were attacked because they were after a ransom. They wanted to kidnap this child emperor, the first servant. and that there's a nearby planet that they are sort of rivals with, and she suspects that perhaps maybe they were attempting to kidnap the boy to use him for ransom.
Yeah, and we get a close-up on Pike at this moment where my interpretation of his body language is that he doesn't quite believe this, or he senses that she's holding something back or not telling the whole truth. He just looks at her. He looks at her a little funny, like, really? Like, that's okay. That's what we're going with. All right. Well, I don't know any better, so I'll go with it for now. But he looks like he doesn't quite buy that.
Well, he's right, because the whole thing is sketchy. So the Enterprise crew decides that they are going to investigate the pursuing ship, because they have attacked this ship and it is incapacitated. So they're going to see if they can get any information from that ship. And I did note that the shot while they investigate this ship, they kind of cut a hole in the metal and break into the ship essentially, but it's 90 degrees off, so it's rotated. Yeah, it's very weird. And then once the characters come on screen, then it slowly rotates so that they are, horizontal or whatever.
Yeah, we're having some fun with the camera.
It was a cool looking shot, but I was trying to figure out, I'm like, are you trying to tell me something with this? Like, why?
No, they were just having they're doing some movie magic just to make it interesting to watch, which is nice. I mean, if you just get the same camera angle for every shot, it gets a little boring.
So Uhura and La'an basically do a quick security pass through the ship just to make sure there's nobody on board and there's no traps or whatever. At one point, La'an chastises Uhura for touching some sort of panel, and she says, no, let your tricorder do the scanning. Anything could be a trap, anything could set this off. So
so she only says it after she watches Uhura go up to this thing and touch it, and then says, okay, that's the next lesson of security, is don't touch things, use your tricorder. You could have maybe if you're really worried that there's going to be a deathly booby trap that she's going to spring, maybe tell her that before she touches it.
Yeah, also when you're not standing like 8 feet away, right,
yeah. So
they do get the all clear. They don't find anybody on the ship, so they message Spock and Allura, who I guess were standing outside. I don't know. They arrive shortly thereafter, and they continue to explore the ship and see if they can.
Well, I think the ramification is that they beam down first, clear the scene, and then they have the rest of the officers beam down, which makes sense. That's a really good security protocol. It makes you wonder why Starfleet seems to have abandoned that protocol later on when the UA team just all comes down at once every day.
Right. So Spock and Allura show up, and they are investigating, if there any wreckage on the ship, if there's anything that would indicate, perhaps why they were being pursued or who was it. Allura kind of leans down and gets down on one knee, and she finds an oath coin. It's kind of, looks like a quarter or something. And she mentions that it's the highest of the Magellan military honors. So there is essentially an upper crust of the military, or the monarchy protectorate, and he may have betrayed his oath if his coin is here.
Yeah, they also find some object that they're not able to identify. Allura says she doesn't know what it is. Sorry, I'm merging names together now. Allura, not Allura. We have La'an, Una, and Allura in this episode. That's going to be fun. So yeah, Allura says she doesn't know what that object is, and seems to be telling the truth, particularly since she does identify the coin. But it's very clearly a scalp massager that they have repurposed.
It looks like definitely something that would go over your head, and none of them seem to pick that up.
So in true Star Trek tradition, we're taking some kind of mundane object and repurposing it. Like Geordi LaForge's visor in the first, I think, 2 seasons of Next Generation was a big hair clip that they just spray painted gold. And this is clearly some kind of sharper image scalp massager that they've painted silver and put some LEDs on. So.
Allura, after seeing the coin, and making mention of, its heritage, she gets a little concerned look in her face, and she realizes that perhaps maybe they are all at risk now, because this means that one of her top guards has, maybe shifted allegiances. So she is now concerned, and I think Pike offers to keep her on the Enterprise, to keep her safe while they investigate and they figure out, a little bit more about this coin.
Yeah, and she says basically, I don't have time for that. I've got duties down on the planet I need to attend to. I have to go back. And he says, well, we'll send an attachment of armed guards with you. And she says, no, like we can't do that. We're a very private people. Outsiders aren't welcome. Or foreign representatives, I think is what she says.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, well, what about friends? You can have friends, right? And then it jump cuts to a scene of the shuttle going down. So clearly she's agreed to let a friend come along. But yeah, it was a little strange. Like, hey, no, we can't allow outsiders on the surface. Oh, but you can have visitors, right? Oh, yeah, that's no problem. Come along.
Especially like armed security visitors.
Right. I mean, I get her saying, like, yeah, we can't have the Federation send this official, like, armed regiment down to the planet's surface, but you'd think she might have offered up, like, yeah, but I can bring a guest down with me. I can have a +1.
Right. So that is indeed what happens. Is you see Allura and Pike down on the Majalis, and it is very clear that Allura is a high muckety muck on this planet. She has her place among the hierarchy as a high-ranking, politician, probably. But she's got
an attendant that's her scheduler is kind of following her and telling her what her day portends, and she's got a full plate.
She's a very busy lady, for sure.
Yep.
So, Allura, actually, there's a scene with Allura and her guards, and she has all the guards down on their knees. I think there was 6 of them, and she asks them all to reaffirm their oath.
Yeah, before they go in with the guards, there's a quick aside with Pike. She says, yeah, I've got my guards assembled, and I'm gonna address them. And he says, okay, you're shaking the tree to see what comes out. And she says, yeah, basically that's my plan. And then as they're walking into the room together, we see that Pike has his phaser on him, and he flips it on before they go in. So he's expecting trouble, and apparently her +1 can come armed.
I mean, yeah, if you think that if she's, a high muckety muck, if she's, I don't know, a senator or whatever, and she shows up at these official briefings with somebody that, nobody on this planet knows who Pike is, and he's armed. I mean, that'd be like a senator taking like a +1 to Congress, and he's got like clearly has a sidearm there. Like everybody's like, yeah, sure, no big deal, right?
Yeah, I think they would have created some comment beyond what we get. But anyway, yeah, then we go in, we've got the scene with the guards where they're all kneeling in a ceremony.
So she goes down, she asks each of the guards in turn to reaffirm their oath, again, trying to ferret out if there's somebody who's flipped sides. And she asked each one of the guards to show their oath coin, the one that she had found on this, the one that she had previously found on the attacking ship. And one of the guards, whose name is Kier, Kier, he has a coin, and it has a big scratch on it. And she makes mention of that. She says, oh, what happened to your coin? And he essentially just gets up and runs out of where they are. Yeah. And the other guards pursue him, and he just immediately turns around and just straight up vaporizes one of them. Yeah. So these stabs they have are pretty deadly. And she notices the case. They have a medallion they're wearing, basically, that has their coin inserted into it. And she notices that the casing on his medallion is damaged, as if so he pried the coin out, basically. Is that what he had replaced her coin because his was left on the ship? Right, but he's got another one, so that kind of made me wonder, where. I mean, I guess they've got technology and he can have one made, but it seemed odd that he was able to get another coin. But oh well, he sent his coin as a token of his loyalty to whoever he's decided to betray these people for, and now he's replaced it, but he scratched up the dang case, man. It's those details, they're gonna get you. Oh, I didn't even, so you think he sent it to those other people as like a sign that he's on their
guess,
side.
or he was or I guess.
I just assumed he dropped it, but I guess it makes more sense that he would
Actually,
send it to them.
no. I guess that makes more sense because they said something like, "Oh, you were on the ship once they." Anyway, sorry, spoiler alert. Once they catch him, they say he must have been on that shuttle that crashed, and then before they all beamed out. So I guess the implication is his coin. He had scratched it up himself. It got damaged in the crash. He replaced the coin because it was scratched up, and he wanted to blend in again. But they noticed damage to the anyway.
Oh, I like your definition better. Like here's a sign of my.
Yeah, maybe.
All right. Either way.
Anyway, so he vaporizes the guard and then runs out into the gardens.
They kind of have like a hedge maze, and they run through the garden. And
I have to say, it's either incredibly good green screen, but I don't think so. I think this was an outdoor set.
It sure looked realistic to me. It was.
I think they shot this somewhere in some real garden, and then obviously they're going to have CGI backdrops and stuff. But it looked like a real set. One of the more fancy, large outdoor sets we've seen in a Star Trek show that I can remember.
So
we get the crew goes to Rigel or something previous shows, but it's all just like a matte painting they're standing in front of or something.
Yeah.
So no, it was pretty cool to see them use a pretty large outdoor set.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and it was well shot too. Kier does some kind of like some dodging. He takes out a couple guards. Everyone's chasing him now. Ultimately, Pike is the one who catches him. Pike just straight up like front tackles him.
He clotheslines him.
Yeah.
And my first thought as I was watching this scene is like, man, these guards are crap. Yeah,
they were terrible.
Like, these are supposed to be the best of the best, and he's just mowing them all down like they're just rag dolls. So I guess he's very well trained in hand-to-hand combat, and the rest of these guys just skipped that, apparently. Maybe they're all political appointees or something, but they are not crap guards.
Not Pike. Pike takes him out like a boss.
Of course. Pike is the hero, so he gets the victory punch.
Yes. Pike tackles him and then pulls his phaser out basically to hold him, keep him from running some more.
He says it's not on stun.
Yeah, that's such a great line. So Kier grabs Allura and holds a knife to her throat. He's still, in fight or flight mode. He's still going to try and run or do something.
Yeah. I do have a question, though. Why is it not on stun?
That's a good question. I mean, because again, he's a guest on this planet. You don't just want to be executing,
and you want to interrogate this guy. So why on earth wouldn't you just stun him? That's I guess it's more dramatic that way. But
I think it's probably
bugged me.
Yeah. Okay. I did think it was interesting because after Kier grabs Allura and holds a knife to her throat, she doesn't even really hesitate. She just like full on like judo flips him over the front of him, and onto this gravel.
Yeah, she's got serious moves. So I don't know why the guards didn't get some training time with her, because she's really badass.
Yeah, she didn't hesitate at all. She was just like, he holds a knife to her, she grabs him, flips him over. They fall on top of each other, and ultimately his knife ends up, getting crushed between them, and he dies from getting flipped over by Allura.
Yeah, I mean, she takes him out like a boss. So yeah, we've got Pike and Allura both A+ on hand-to-hand combat.
We see a quick scene with Spock in sickbay with the first servant's father. He mentions it's the head massager thing they found on the shuttle, and they've done some research, and they've determined that it is a neural dampener. And so they are suspecting now even more that this might have been a plot to kidnap the first servant, like they were going to use this on him to dampen his signals, his neural signals, so they couldn't hone in on him if they were to kidnap him. There's a kind of a back and a forth between the first servant and Spock. They have a whole discussion about, I think it was about the speed of light. And I'm not sure how old this kid is supposed to be, like, probably 9 or 10. But the notes that I wrote down was that the first servant is a huge nerd. Like he knows math and science, and he was really going to town with Spock.
Yeah, and he's asking him some questions about sublight communications, and then kind of is incredulous that they're able to use this, antiquated technology. Basically, he says,
right.
with it, it speeds that slow, the signal would degrade after several light years. And, that's not, you should use this other signal I've come up with.
Yeah, and Spock says, I do not know many your age who grasp radio polarization. So
yeah, Spock was very impressed.
Yep, for sure.
And the first servant offers to whip up a transmitter by reconfiguring the bio bed he's sleeping in.
Right.
And Spock says that would be an impressive feat, but he doesn't think Dr. Mbenga would have.
For sure. The next thing we see is La'an and Uhura are in what I assume is 10 forward. I mean, it's kind of the common...
it's the mess hall or whatever it is.
And La'an has some gadgets that she found at the crash site.
Well, first we see Uhura is just wolfing down a meal. She's just shoveling these noodles into her mouth as fast as she can. And we get an appearance by Sam Kirk again, who has been missing for a few episodes, but he shows up and says, hey, you're allowed an hour break. Like, you don't have to wolf that food down. And Uhura says, I don't think La'an, really believes in breaks. So I got to hurry up. And he says, well, you should tell her, you're entitled to an hour. And Uhura says, well, will you talk to her for me? And at this point, La'an walks up and he says, yeah, I'm not going to put my head in the lion's mouth. Sorry. He bails the second La'an shows up. So
he nopes out of there pretty quick.
Yeah. So he's willing to give some advice, but not stand up to La'an. And I think this was, more of a, hey, remember Sam Kirk? Here he is. And then off he goes. So.
La'an does mention that she has some gadgets from this crash site, but she doesn't know exactly what they are. They have some sort of language written on them, and she would like to know more about them. But because they are contraband, La'an is not supposed to have taken anything from the crash site. So they are considered contraband, so she can't use the computer system to translate them. So Uhura, being a linguistics expert, she says, hey, maybe this is something you can look into since it's not official.
Yeah. Except we took the coin and the neural dampener from the crash site. So, yeah.
Well, I kind of assume like that was like the official record, like that was entered into, we confiscated these, but La'an maybe put these in her pocket for some reason instead of going the official route. I don't know. It's not important. So
she basically says, hey, you're a linguist, like, get to work. And La'an is like, oh my God, like this is a big job. Uhura says, oh my God, like this is going to take a while. Like I'm going to have to go through this like line by line, basically. And La'an's like, well, you're a linguist, right? Like get to work, and just leaves her there with them. So,
we cut to sickbay real quick, and we see Mbenga is talking to the first servant's father, and he asks about, I think cytokemia, if I remember right, is the disease that his daughter has, and he's basically asking about, what do you know about this? Is this something that you could, you have the technology to cure? Clearly he's looking for some assistance with his daughter. And the father basically says, we don't accept outside influence. We don't have an alliance with the Federation. So, sorry, dude, you're on your own.
Yeah.
It was really kind of cold. I noted that it was just like he shoots him down. Like he doesn't offer like, here's a pamphlet on, some technology, or here's maybe a couple places you could start looking. He's just basically like, we're kind of a solitary
race. That's not what we do. Sorry. But then at the end, he says something along the lines of, but you never know. Maybe we'll ally with the Federation in the future, and then we could share technology. So he does, you can see like a little crack in the facade of Elder Gamal. He says his spiel about, sorry, tough luck. And then his face softens a little bit and he says, but who knows, maybe we'll ally and then we could share. And Mbenga has a look like, okay, well, you didn't give me anything there, but I appreciate that at least you're not just telling me to get lost.
We see Pike and Allura flirting after the attack a little bit. She is happy that Pike saved her, and Pike is happy that she's alive. So they continue their weird little flirting. They kiss real quick.
Yeah, although, Pike didn't really save her at all. She took care of business.
We see she offers that Pike can come with her, on Majalis instead of going back to the Enterprise, and we see a quick cut of Pike shirtless in Allura's bed.
He says that he can bring some guards down, and she says, no, you can't bring guards onto the planet. He says, well, I could stand out here then. Basically, she says, well, you could come inside if you want. So yeah, and then we cut to they've been having another very enthusiastic cuddle session. I'm sure that's all it was, because
yes,
Starfleet doesn't have time for that stuff.
And I didn't, and maybe you can help explain this to me, though. Pike has a line while they're discussing here where he says, "It's rare to know what's in your future." And then he proceeds to tell her about the premonition that he's seen about his accident coming. But I didn't fully understand, what preceded him to say it's rare to know what's in your future.
I think
was she talking about the
I thought that was
ascension?
her line, but maybe I'm wrong. You've got the transcript, right? Was that her line or his? Anyway, I thought it was her line. She says something along the lines of, we don't really know what the future is going to hold. And he's like, well, I do, actually. And he insists that, in 10 years, there's going to be an accident that doesn't end well for him. And she says, how can you know that? And he just says, I know. And she seems to accept that at that point. Although I would want more details if someone was telling me they knew their future to a certainty. I'd be like, okay, well, how? But yeah, he doesn't offer that up. She just accepts that he knows.
But he is very forthcoming with this. There's very few people that know about his premonition.
Yeah, clearly he has a lot of trust in her, because he hasn't shared this with anyone other than Una, as far as I know.
And he doesn't he tell Spock?
Does he? Okay.
I'm trying to. But anyway, the point is that it's not common knowledge. So
no.
So Pike basically says, hey, I've got this. I got 10 years and something bad is going to happen. And Allura says, well, you'd be welcome here. So she's again offering hey, you can stay and live with us in this utopia, right? So
yeah, and he seems hesitant. I just don't know if that's what I want to do. Which I understand. He's captain of the Enterprise. He wants to do his thing. But man, in 10 years, you could just say, okay, well, hey, yeah, sure. In 10 years, when this accident happens, then I'll come live here, because if the alternative doesn't, what do you got to lose at that point, man? So I'm not sure why he isn't all in on that, but
well, Allura, multiple times is trying to get Pike to stay and hang out. She wants a relationship with this guy. She's putting the full court press on him. But I wrote down, but Ubenga can't even get like a medical tricorder or some information on cytokemia. Elder Gamal shut him down super fast. But Allura's hey, you know what? Whatever you want, we're here for you.
Well, but she does mention that. She says, oh, well, our medical technology could handle, this cellular degeneration you're going to have. We could fix that, no problem. And then she says, oh, but you'd have to be one of us.
Right.
So it is the same thing. Basically, Elder Gamal told Mbenga, we can't share our technology with outsiders. You'd have to be I can't remember what's the name of this planet again? The
Majalis.
Majalis. Yeah, you'd have to be a Majalan for us to share our medical technology with you. And Allura is basically saying you can become a Magellan.
She's saying you can. Okay.
But I think the implication is basically, but then you're here to stay.
Okay.
You're not going to just come for a couple of weeks and hang out with me and get the procedure and then go. You're going to move here permanently.
We see that Uhura has translated these gadgets. She presents the information to La'an. And she went above and beyond. She translated them, she cross-referenced them, she did a bunch of research to figure out the roots of these languages. And she says, "Okay, La'an, here you go. You can go take this to the Captain Pike now." And La'an like defers. She was like, no, you did all this research. You should go tell him.
Right, which is nice of her. But at first, Uhura says, "Okay, I did this massive translation job by hand for you, and here's what they say." And La'an says, "Oh, okay, so you just did exactly what I expected you to.
Yeah.
You did exactly what I asked of you. So no, I don't give you any props for that. I asked you to do this. You did it. You did your job. Good for you. You're not getting any kudos." And then Uhura says, "Well, no, actually, I went beyond that. And here I did the roots of the language, and I've got some big information for you." And then La'an is grudgingly impressed and then says, "Yeah, you should go present this to the captain yourself." So, yeah, La'an's tough to please.
For sure.
If she asks you to do something that's really tough and you come through, that's not good enough.
So ultimately, that's what happens is we see Uhura, Una, La'an, and Pike and Spock actually on the bridge going over this translation that Uhura has come up with. And they basically determine that these artifacts have the language is extremely similar to Magellan, but not Magellan. So they have the same roots. So what they're able to determine is that there was essentially an offshoot from Magellan that went and started their own colony, I guess. And it's called Prospect 7. And one of the quotes was, "Why would anyone leave paradise for Prospect 7?" So there's again, they're hammering home the idea that Majalis is essentially perfect, and there's no crime, there's no disease, there's no like. There'd have to be a pretty good reason for somebody to want to leave and go start their own colony.
Yeah, it's very fishy. Like, why do these people want out of paradise?
Right about then, I believe Pike gets an emergency alert that someone is attempting to beam out. So they Pike.
Well, Mbenga calls and says, "Hey, Captain."
That's what it was. Yes.
Yeah, we've got an issue. Elder Gamal and the first servant just left sickbay. I couldn't stop.
Right, and so Pike immediately enables red alert. And they run to the transporter room, and they get there just in time. And they see the Elder Gamal and the first servant, and then he beams out. And Pike kind of looks over at Kyle. He's like, "What are you doing? You can't beam him out." He was like, "Dude, that wasn't me. Somebody else beamed them out." So back on the bridge, they see a shuttle. I don't know if it's clear if it's the same shuttle from the opening, but there's a shuttle.
Yeah, it's the same kind of ship they destroyed in the opening scene.
So Pike, they're attempting to go to warp. So Pike doesn't want to fire on them. So he has the Enterprise attach a tractor beam. But that does not slow the shuttle down. Like, they are going to continue to go to warp, and they're going to.
Well, it does. It stops the shuttle. It's not moving anymore. But then they announce, "Hey, it's still. They're trying to go to warp anyway, even though they were in this tractor beam." And
and it's gonna hurt both the Enterprise and the shuttle if they don't disengage because they are not backing down. So they.
My impression was the Enterprise is going to be fine, but this ship could tear itself to pieces if it goes to warp while it's in the tractor beam. This is Mitchell again, who says that their integrity is going to be compromised if they go to warp. And since the first servant is on this shuttle, Pike says, "Hey, okay, then disengage. We can't risk any harm to the first servant."
The line is, "The stress is creating a catastrophic strain imbalance. I have to increase our structural integrity field." I assumed she was talking about the Enterprise, but yeah, you're right. She probably was talking about the shuttle.
Oh, no, there she's talking about the Enterprise. Like, hey, I've got to compensate for this to keep the Enterprise safe. But I mean, the Enterprise is going to be fine. But yeah, if this ship actually goes to warp while in the tractor beam, she says there's a very good chance it's going to tear itself apart.
So that's ultimately what they do is they decide to disengage the tractor beam so that the ship won't rip itself apart. But it is too late. The shuttle blows up trying to go to warp anyway. So the bridge crew is kind of shocked because they were just trying to do the right thing. And just as they disengaged,
Elder Gamal is understandably very shocked by this. We see him look just absolutely devastated watching this shuttle blow.
So where is so this is where I got confused because I thought Elder Gamal and the first servant beamed onto the shuttle.
They did, and then Pike says, "Hey, get them back," and they transport Elder Gamal back, but they're unable to transport back the first servant.
So who was on the? So there was somebody else on this shuttle trying to go to warp because.
The shuttle's crewed by someone. I mean, it's folks
okay.
from Prospect 7 is what we're thinking at this point. The Elder Gamal and the first servant get transported over. Pike says, "Get them back." They transport them back, but only get Elder Gamal. They do not get the first servant.
Oh, I see.
And so then the first servant's on the shuttle. They'll go to the bridge. They do the tractor beam thing. It blows up the shuttle. Elder Gamal then looks absolutely devastated watching the shuttle blow up. And then that's the end of the scene.
So what we see next, and there's a couple rapid scenes here to basically cover what has just happened, because at this point, it appears the first servant has died because he was on that shuttle when it blew up. So Allura and Pike are having a discussion on the main view screen, and she's clearly extremely upset that the first servant is dead. And her line is, "The surface of our planet is nothing but rivers of lava and lakes of acid. We will be destroyed." So it's not clear exactly to the audience, and it's not clear to Pike either, what the first servant has to do with the planet. And
he says something along the lines of, I understand that this had a lot of symbolic significance to your people, but I don't understand how one child can do, the loss of one child is going to doom your civilization.
It's mentioned that Elder Gamal got some detailed bioscans from the sickbay computers to allow them to beam the first servant and Elder Gamal out of the Enterprise without them being aware. They just basically made mention that there's no way he could have done that unless he had detailed scans, and it's mentioned that he got them from the sick bay.
Right. Well, when they get off with Allura, Pike, turns to the crew and he says, "Hey, can anyone explain to me how they were able to beam someone off of my ship?"
Right.
And then it cuts to this conference room where they're having a discussion, and it's Uhura who's figured it out. She's presenting some information. We kind of come into the middle of the conversation. We're going fast through this. Elder Gamal says, that's insane. That's crazy. You can't prove that. And La'an says, no, Uhura is just using facts and logic and stepping through it. And then Uhura says, yeah, the only way they could have done this is the only way they could have beamed someone off is if they were able to lock on extremely fast. And the only way they could lock on that quickly without us knowing they were doing it is if they had very detailed biological scans. And I found that Elder Gamal accessed those scans right before they went to the transport.
When Pike hears about this, he orders, or maybe it's Una, they order Elder Gamal to put in the brig.
Because while they're having this discussion, Spock calls him and says, "Hey, Captain, I've got something on Deck 17 you're going to need to see right away." So he basically says, "All right, we're going to table this discussion with Elder Gamal, throw him in the brig for now, and I'll go see what's up with Spock."
Ultimately, they find that the first servant is alive, and he is hidden in a pod on the Enterprise, so he is not dead. He was hiding. So when they rescue the first servant from this pod, he comes. Pike lifts him out of this pod, and he says he wants to go ascend ASAP. His goal: I need to get down to the surface. The ascension, process is beginning. I need to get down there right away.
Yeah, and Spock found him because he was sending out this subspace distress call, and Spock was monitoring that subspace channel that the first servant had mentioned earlier in the episode, that he made his own subspace channel. Okay. Spock says, I thought it was prudent to monitor that channel, and found that he was sending this distress call from the cargo bay. So the implication here, as far as I could tell, was that Gamal and the first servant get beamed over to this shuttle, but almost immediately after that, the first servant beams himself back to the Enterprise. So he's not only got this subspace transmitter, but he's rigged up a transporter too.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And that's why when they beam back, they try to beam back Gamal and the first servant, they only get Gamal because he's the only one who's on the shuttle at that point.
I will have to admit this was a flaw in the storytelling because
it went fast. It
who
went real
where
fast.
and who came back was not clear.
No, it wasn't.
So
this flew by real quick, and my guess is that most people watching the episode, God, that sounds like I understood what happened, but most people probably didn't because my superior intellect was able to pick up on it.
You understood it better than I did.
For whatever reason, I was able to follow it, but it was. I had to go back and I rewatched that little bit just to. Yeah, it wasn't clear. It happened very fast. It wasn't explained very well. I mean, all that's really important is just to know that the first servant beam somehow ended up in this cargo pod and didn't die. That's the important piece of information. And, how we got there isn't super important. But that seemed to be the implication, is that he was able to beam himself back to the Enterprise. But not Elder Gamal. Apparently he was... like, I got my out ticket. I'm taking it. Good luck.
So what we see next is Una and Elder Gamal in the brig, and Una is kind of interrogating him about what the heck are you doing trying to kidnap this kid. He basically explains that he was working with the quote-unquote bad guys from Prospect 7, and he was going to use the neural dampener to hide the brain signals of the first servant and basically help him escape.
Yeah, he said it was to prevent him from ascending.
Yeah, he goes on basically to explain essentially that ascending means that the first servant is going to die, or he's going to sacrifice himself.
Yeah, he says, I wanted to save him.
So
and we're still not clear on exactly what he's trying to save him from, but he clearly has, and he says, I betrayed my most deeply held beliefs, but I just couldn't sacrifice my son, is what he says.
We see, so Una, with this new information, wants to get this to Pike to fill him in on what is happening. So at this point, Pike, Alora, and the first servant are down on Majalis. The ascension ceremony is well underway. It's a big deal on this planet. There's a bunch of people out there having a big party. She wants to beam down to talk to Pike, and they are unable to beam down, and they are also unable to message Pike. So he is cut off from the Enterprise, and he is not able to determine, so Una is not able to give him this information. So Una's a little upset at this, but there's not a whole lot she can do. We see, it is worth noting that Pike is the first outsider to be allowed to view this ascension ceremony. This is a big deal on this planet. This isn't something that just, regular common folk get to attend, and certainly not outsiders. But because of Pike's relationship with Alora, she says, sure, come and you can watch this ascension ceremony. It's going to be really cool. They're kind of in this weird kind of light-looking cave, kind of got some like Tron vibes a little bit from it.
Yeah, the first servant in particular, Pike seems a little uneasy at this point. I think it's sinking in for him that like there's something going on here. Like, especially they talk about this ascension, and like this is a little weird. I'm not quite. He's getting some vibes here that he's clearly not super comfortable with. But then the first servant specifically comes up to him and says, Captain Pike, come with us. I want you to see my ascension. And so he's like, all right, well, the kid's into it. I guess I'll go along.
Yeah, the kid's way into it. It's really a little bit creepy.
Yeah.
Ultimately, what ends up happening is that the guards, they bring out like a kind of a cloth stretcher, and they reveal that they pull the blanket back or whatever, and there is the corpse, like a desiccated corpse of the previous.
They haven't even quite pulled it back. They're carting this thing on a stretcher off. The first servant sees that and says, "Oh God," and then looks scared. And he's been all in on, it's my ascension. Let's do this. And then he sees them carting off with what we then pretty quickly find out is this desiccated corpse, and it shakes him. He's like, "Oh my God! Like, what? This is, I don't know about this now." He's clearly a little bit hesitant. Because while they're carting off this corpse, Alora has kind of knelt down in front of him, and she's going through a ritual with him, asking if he freely, freely agrees to be the first servant, and if he freely chooses to sacrifice himself for the good of all. Basically, she's got kind of a litany of things she's going through with him. And he's rattling off, yes, I do. And then he sees them hauling off this corpse, and he stops. He doesn't answer that whatever the last question is she asks him. He doesn't answer, and just says, "Oh God," as he sees this thing go by. And Pike goes to take a step forward, and the guards block his path.
Well, her line right before that, I thought it was great. I wrote it down. She stands up because she wants to get the ceremony moving. So her line is, "He chooses it freely, and we honor his sacrifice. Long live the first servant." And like you said, yeah, right about then, Pike realizes what's going to happen. Like, this kid is going to sacrifice himself for what? It's not clear, does he have special powers? Like, how does, again, we're talking about the rivers of lava and lakes of acid. So somehow this kid keeps that in check. So I think what's going through his mind is, oh, this is some sort of crazy ritualistic thing to, appease the gods of this planet, which scientifically doesn't make any sense. So he tries to get involved. He's like, I'm going to save this kid, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense because there's one Pike and like 8 guards.
But so he goes to take a step forward, and Alora says, they stop him, and Alora says, no, it's fine. Like, he can see. And so the guards then let him approach, and he goes up to the stretcher and pulls back this shroud that's over this body and sees that it's this desiccated corpse of a child. And then says, "Oh my God, it's a child. What are you doing?" And at this point, the first servant runs up and jumps in the pod, basically, that they've got. So he does choose to go up there. No one forces him to. There's a bit of a moment there where I'm like, okay, he's now hesitant. Alora is either going to have to talk him into it, or they're just going to throw him in there against his will. I'm not sure what's going to happen here. But he does ultimately make the choice to get up there himself and hop in the chair. And then Pike tries to rescue him. Yeah, which is not the best decision, since, there's like 8 guards versus 1 Pike.
Pike does punch one of the guards, but ultimately he gets knocked out.
Well, I was just going to say, these guards are crap.
Yeah, right.
He takes out like 4 of the 8 before they subdue him.
Oh, I thought he only punched one of them. Really? He took out 4 of them?
I don't know how many it was, anyway. But I mean, he's being held by 2 of them. He like judo chops both those guys down to the ground, and then charges up to get to the kid, and then one of the other ones knocks him out with his staff. But he does very well against superior numbers before they take him out.
Maybe when you live in a utopian planet like Majalis, you don't need to worry about combat training.
Again, they need to have some morning calisthenics with Alora, because she knows what she's doing.
The scene ends with the first servant in this machine, I guess it is, and you see like these sort of weird tubes come out of this machine and go into his face, sort of like kind of Borg-esque, like there's some tubes that feed into his body, and the first servant has kind of this...
It's very sinister, like they almost look like snakes. Like they're slithering around. It's not like just like these straight like things. They're kind of like snaking around, and then they jam into his face. It's not a pleasant scene.
And the first servant is he's scared. The look on his face is he's not enjoying this process.
No. And then when they jam into his face, there's a glow, and his eyes kind of light up. So he's now one with whatever this machine is.
But Pike is knocked out, so that's where that scene ends. And Pike wakes up in Alora's bedroom again, and Alora is still like kind of putting the moves on him, or at least,
well, she's trying to, hey, it's okay, like everything's fine. He kind of recoils from her and gets up out of the bed almost immediately. And so her plan was, hey, he's going to come witness this ascension, and then, maybe I can talk him into staying, seems to be what her plan was. I don't know where she got the idea that he was going to be down with this.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, I think this is part of the conversation I want to have. So let's work through the scene, and then we'll talk about the morality clause of it.
Sure.
So Pike wakes up in Alora's bedroom. He's freaked out. Like, what the heck? You just sacrificed this kid. She says, no, it's okay. We've been doing this ceremony forever. This is part of the natural order of things. Pike says, I don't care. I'm going to save that kid. Like, you guys are crazy. Alora says, it's too late. If you pull him out of that machine, it will kill him anyway. So Pike kind of accepts the fact that, okay, this is the fate of this kid. He's going to be in this machine for however long to keep the planet functioning. Pike says, will he suffer? And Alora just says, yes. Yeah. So the whole foundation of Majalis, and the reason that they have this utopian society, is because the entire thing is based on the suffering of this child.
Yeah.
And Pike thinks that's horrific. He's, what are you doing? Your society is based on suffering. And Alora says, well, aren't there poor kids, sad kids in the Federation? There's no kids going hungry. We have a different type of suffering. You can't say that Federation is better because there is no suffering.
Yeah, she basically says the only difference is that we choose to look at it. We don't look away.
And I think she also says that Majalis is a paradise because only one kid suffers versus, in the Federation, how many kids are hungry or starving or whatever.
Yeah, and then they clearly know this isn't okay because she says that they've been searching for centuries for an alternative.
Pike, she's putting the full court press on Pike. Like, this is just the way it's always been. Like, it's cool. I really like you. I think you should stay here with me. She's trying to smooth things over with him.
Yeah, and she says their founders designed this to run, whatever this machine is that powers their civilization. Their founders designed it to run off of the brain of a child. They don't know why. And they've been searching for centuries for an alternative but haven't found one. And she tells him that in that original shuttle crash where they met, the reason she was up on that shuttle is they were doing research looking for some other way to power this machine. Mm. So she's basically saying, yeah, we're not total monsters. We understand the moral implication of this. We just don't have a choice. And, we're trying to find a way out of it, but we haven't yet. And you should just look past this and live with it.
Pike not having it, and this is kind of a boss move. So she's still trying to rationalize it to him.
She says, she's like, I don't think you'll want to stay now, but I hope you will. And he just stands up, pulls out his communicator, and says, "Number one, do it." And then
he says now number one, no hesitation.
Yeah.
And they weren't in communication or anything. He says now number one, and then just immediately beams out of there like mic drop.
Yeah.
So I guess the implication here is, this is a religious ceremony. Now, say what you will about religious ceremonies, but there's all kinds of weird religious ceremonies on Earth, where, a lot of, where animals are sacrificed or where, so it seems kind of weird to me that Pike is super duper motivated to get involved in what is a religious ceremony and is going to have major diplomatic ramifications.
It's probably, and that's basically the end of the episode. By the way, we can get into our discussion of the morality here, but Pike beams up and we see Alora. She sheds a few tears for Pike leaving, but that's it. And then
there's a quick scene with Elder Gamal and Ubenga, and Elder Gamal has basically changed his tune a little bit now that he realizes that he couldn't save his son. He couldn't save the first servant. So he kind of has a small change of heart. And he says, if I couldn't save my son, maybe I can sort of kind of help you save yours.
He says maybe he's going to go to Prospect 7 now and live with these people. He says, I thought they were traitors and fools, but now I see they just couldn't bear to live with this hypocrisy, basically. And he says, I couldn't save my son, but maybe I can help save the next one. So they're going to try again.
He does give Ubenga essentially some basic information on cyanochemia. He says it's not a cure, but it may be a first step. So Ubenga now has at least he's got some starting point. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then the last scene, we see Pike just standing in his dark quarters drinking.
Yeah, and looking out the window, looking very forlorn.
Yeah, so he's just sitting in the dark drinking some whiskey, and that's it. That's the end of the episode.
So, am I wrong? It seemed weird to me that Pike was so quick to get involved in a religious ceremony. I'm just thinking the United States.
Here's the thing, though. I mean, this is going to be, this is bias at work for sure. But it's one thing to accept that kind of religious activity from a society that you consider inferior to you. It's another thing to accept it from this supposedly enlightened people that have advanced technology.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
So
All right.
I mean, that's just I think that's why he's so outraged, is that these, they've got no excuse. They're these enlightened people, um, and I don't think, there aren't any large scale religious sects on Earth at this point in the year 2022 that do ritual sacrifice of any kind.
I mean, maybe
And
that's the difference. I guess the only modern analog that I can see is right now what is the World Cup is going on in Qatar, and how many slaves were literally used to build this. They think they've said.
Well, that's the thing. If you want to, I wouldn't come at this from the religious aspect. It's more just the morality of what kinds of sacrifices are you willing to make to stand up your society and your standard of living. And Allura, just drives the dagger home. She says, "Hey, don't stand there and tell me that there's no children suffering in the Federation. You guys just don't. You guys just choose to look away and enjoy this high tech way of life that you've got out gallivanting around the stars, while there's children suffering somewhere in the Federation, and you just don't pay any attention to it. We, stare it right in the face and don't look away." And she's got a point, because right now, I'm going to watch some World Cup games in the next month. There were some pretty serious moral implications to that tournament happening, and I'm going to watch it anyway. What does that say about me? I don't know.
Well, I mean, the other thing, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, like, the U.S. isn't over there, invading or stopping Qatar from doing whatever they are, all these slaves building this, right? There's diplomatic concern.
We're implicit in it, though.
Sure. So I think
complicit in it.
I think it's interesting that Pike was so willing to get involved in this when, in the geopolitical politics, like, it's not so simple. Like, I mean,
it's personal
Biden just
for him, because Allura is his potential, she's asking him to, join her and live with her and be in a relationship. So it's personal to him.
Yeah.
Plus, he just watched this kid get killed in front of him. That's the other thing. Like,
right. It's very fresh and raw.
Again, Allura's got a point. Like, you and I can, we know that there's tragedies and horrible things happening in the world right this second, but we can ignore it because it's not happening right in front of us.
Mm.
But Pike literally saw this kid get sacrificed. That's going to stick with you. I mean, right now we're recording this podcast using technological components that probably some kid was involved in manufacturing at some point.
Yeah, good point.
And we sit in, relative wealth in the United States using this stuff, while some kid out there is suffering, and we accept that.
You can't fight every battle, I guess.
You can't. But I mean, this was one that happened right in front of it.
Yeah. So, okay. All right. I'll buy that.
I think we are, again, we're using this, we're benefiting from the suffering of others in our way of life in the United States. That's almost undeniable. But it's not
ignorance.
If suddenly we walked into the factory floor where kids are, sewing clothes with their teeth, we would probably be tempted to step in and do something. It's different when it's right in front of you.
Okay.
It's not just it's not just a morality play at that point. It's not
it's not faceless.
It's not.
It has an actual face.
Yeah, exactly. So
right.
No, this episode asked some really hard questions and didn't leave the audience with any easy answers.
So we've been talking for an hour. You got a rating?
9. This is the best episode so far. No
really?
question.
You like this better than the last episode?
Absolutely. This is Star Trek at its best.
Wow.
It's asking us some hard questions, and it's letting us sit with those questions. It's not giving us any easy answers. Was Allura right? Was Pike right? They're both right.
Wow. Okay. I really like this episode too, and like you said, after hearing the summary at the beginning, like, it doesn't it doesn't grab you. But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff here. I'm going to give this one an 8 just because this really had one theme running through it. It was clearly there's not a lot of B plots in this. It's just
there's no B plot in this, which is I think another reason I liked it so much.
It's very focused. Sure. I think I gave the last one a 9. I can't remember. I liked the last one a little bit more just because there were several different plot points and they all tied together with the same theme. This one is a great episode, start to finish. It does ask really good questions, and the acting is good. We're introduced to some new characters. We get some great character development. We see Obenga move forward a little bit. We see Pike off his game a little bit, which is interesting to see because he's usually, so buttoned up. Yeah, I really like this episode. Great episode. I give it an 8.
Yeah, and for me, this goes to a 9 over. I gave the last one an 8. I'll give this one a 9, and just the reason is mostly that B plot. The B plot with Una and La'an on the Enterprise last time didn't really have anything to do with the Spock to Pring, main story. This time we do have a bit of a B plot again with Uhura. Uhura and La'an, doing her security training is kind of our B plot this time around, but it directly related to what was happening in the main storyline. And Uhura at multiple points was instrumental in figuring out what was going on with, behind the scenes with all this subterfuge. So, I really, really enjoyed this one. Again, I think this is classic Star Trek, where it is using science fiction as a lens to look at issues in our everyday lives and make us think about things in a way that maybe we hadn't before. And that's when Star Trek's at its best. So yeah, this is a 9 for me. This was fantastic.
I can't think of a better way to end than that. So we'll be back in a week.
All right. See y'all then.